countenance Iran getting a nuclear weapon. My policy is not containment. My policy is to prevent them from getting a nuclear weapon, because if they get a nuclear weapon, that could trigger an arms race in the region. It would undermine our non-proliferation goals. It could potentially fall into the hands of terrorists.
That was President Obama vowing to stop Iran from getting a nuclear bomb. But as negotiations restart in Vienna on Tuesday, our next guest says the talks, sadly, could be a waste of time. Matthew Kranig is a professor at Georgetown University and the author of this new book, A Time to Attack, the Looming Iranian Nuclear Threat. He's also worked on defense policy in Iran as a special advisor during the Obama administration at the Pentagon. Professor, welcome. First of all, why do you think military airstrikes could be the only way to stop Iran and not these talks?
Well, it's important to point out that if we can solve this issue diplomatically, that would be by far the best outcome if Iran were willing to dismantle its nuclear program peacefully. But we have to be realistic. President Obama himself says that there's only a 50-50 chance that we can solve this diplomatically and get a comprehensive deal. Personally, I think that estimate's a little bit high. And second, the deal that the administration is pursuing doesn't even necessarily solve the problem. It allows Iran to continue enriching uranium. So that means there's still a better than even chance that we're not going to solve this through diplomacy alone.
So you think a 50-50 estimate from the president is high? You think it's lower than that?
I think it's lower than that. There are many people in Iran who are opposed to this deal in principle. We have to remember that the Iranian regime, going back to the revolution in 1979, is built on resistance to the West. Its legitimacy comes from resisting the United States. The supreme leader regularly refers to the United States as the Great Satan. Crowds of Iranians go to mosque every Friday and chant death to America. So for them, this is very much like making a deal with the devil.
Yeah, they were even chanting death to Wendy Sherman the other day. I mean, Wendy Sherman's the chief U.S. negotiator. So what type of deal can you have if they're out in the streets chanting death to the chief negotiator of the United States?
Exactly. A deal is not attractive from their point of view. They would like to get sanctions relief. The international sanctions the United States has put in place is hurting the economy. And so what I think they're trying to do here is have their cake and eat it too. They want to negotiate to get sanctions relief, but they really don't want to give up this nuclear program. Building nuclear weapons would help them achieve their foremost goals of being able to deter attack and of becoming the most dominant state in the region. Again, I think what they want is sanctions relief and nuclear weapons too. So the goal from the United States is going to be to get a deal that significantly reduces Iran's nuclear capability, but getting that deal is going to be very difficult, as I mentioned before.
Well, do you think they're having their cake and eat it too now? They're getting some sanctions relief. They've not dismantled one thing. I mean, they've maybe unplugged it from the wall, but nothing has been destroyed. And as you write in your book, they really would like to at least be a latent nuclear state. Can you describe that? What do you mean by that?
Well, what Iran's doing that's so troublesome is they're enriching uranium. So enriching uranium is something that can be done to create fuel for nuclear power. So that's what Iran claims that it's doing. But there's very good reason to believe that what they're actually doing is producing fuel for nuclear weapons. And so as long as they have this ability to enrich uranium and to create the fuel, then they essentially have the ability to produce nuclear weapons. And so that's really the key in negotiations. We need to get Iran to stop enriching uranium. But as I mentioned before...
But they're not going to do that. They're continuing to do that. They're violating 6 UN resolutions.
That's exactly right. The 6 UN resolutions have said that they need to stop enriching uranium. This interim deal that we reached in November allows them to continue enriching uranium. And it looks like the comprehensive deal that we're pursuing now would also allow them to continue enriching uranium, and that would be a mistake. To be truly comprehensive, the deal would have to get Iran to stop enriching uranium.
They've said they're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. They're going to enrich uranium forever. So finally, if, as you say, the talks possibly and probably will fail, what happens then? What happens if there are airstrikes? Is that the only way to stop this? And what kind of retaliation could there be? People would say, well, if there are airstrikes, that would lead to war and incredible unrest and retaliation by Iran.
Yeah. Well, there are only 3 options here. If we can't solve this diplomatically, then that means we're going to face a tough choice between either conducting airstrikes on Iran's nuclear facilities to set back the program, or giving up and allowing Iran to have nuclear weapons. And as the video montage earlier made very clear, President Obama has said that he's made his decision, that a nuclear-armed Iran is unacceptable, that he will use force if necessary. So if talks fail, I think that's where this is headed, toward a military confrontation. Now, military strike is a bad option in many ways, but it would set the program back. buy us time, and create a significant possibility that Iran never builds nuclear weapons. There are downside risks, as you point out, including Iranian military retaliation, but these risks are much less serious than the risks of living with a nuclear-armed Iran for decades to come.
May 15th is the deadline of these talks as they continue, and we'll see what happens when we get there. Matthew Crane of Georgetown, whose new book, A Time to Attack, makes these arguments. Thank you so much, Matthew, for joining us today on the Fox News Channel.
Great interview, Eric. Well, a construction project underway in a major